class is on food additives. So what is a food additive? A food additive is a non-nutritious substance which is added intentionally by a food business operator or an entrepreneur to actually improve the organoleptic properties of the fruit, of the food, probably the color, the flavor, texture, and also to help preserve the food for a longer time, especially the packaged food. According to Codex Alimentarius, the definition for food additive, which is almost the same as the definition you will find in FSSAI, is that it means that it is any substance which is not normally consumed as a food by itself, and it is not normally an ingredient in a food, typically in an ingredient. It doesn't have any nutritive value, and the addition, it is intentionally added, and this is generally for improving the technological properties of the food. It could be for the purpose of manufacture, it could be for the purpose of processing, it could be for the process of packaging, or it could also be for transport of the food. And indirectly or directly, the expected outcome of adding a food additive is observed. And when you look at a food additive, its byproducts generally become a component of the food, even if they are degraded. And that is why if a food additive is added to a food, it must be listed in the list of ingredients. Please remember, an additive is different from a contaminant, because the contaminants, like the pesticide residues, are not intentionally added, but the residues are carried over from the agri-produce. So contaminants are different, and you will later see that a food additive is also different from a food processing aid, because we have processing aids which help in the processing of food. So what are the functions of a food additive? The major functions of the food additive are: it is used for preservation of food, that is to prevent microbial growth or microbial degradation, growth of yeast and mold, and any contamination by other microbes. It is used to maintain the nutritional quality. That means, for example, if I have added vitamin C, to the end of the shelf life, I would like to see the same amount of vitamin C. And so an antioxidant can be added so that the nutritional quantity is preserved. It is added to enhance appearance, such as the nice colors that you see in the foods. It is added to improve the flavor, the aroma. It is also added to improve the acidity or alkalinity of a food, the shelf life, and of course to contribute to convenience. A food additive, the properties of a food additive are that at whatever level the food additive is added to the food, it must be safe for the human. And whatever is added to the food must perform its intended function. If it is added as an antioxidant to prevent the effect of oxygen, it must behave as an antioxidant, and it must not behave as a preservative, or it must not behave as a improver, a floor improver. A food additive should not be used to deceive a customer. So low quality food should not be colored to deceive the customer. It should also not be used to cover faulty manufacturing processes, because color can change, the flavor can change. So it should not be used to cover up any of these malpractices. It should not cause any change in the nutritional value of the food. It should not be used above the GMP levels, which, GMP is good manufacturing practice. And a food additive, when added at GMP levels, is almost the minimum amount required to achieve the required technological function. And also, whenever a food additive is added or a food additive is known, there should be a method of analysis to analyze it so that we can actually, the regulators can regulate the food additive. That is, they can analyze the food for the particular food additive. So these are the number of food additives that are available and that have been listed by Codex Alimentarius. There are 27 classes of the food additives, and you will see that in each additive group, you have a subclass and maybe a sub-subclass. So it is not possible to remember all the food additives, but some of the food additives which are popularly used or most commonly used in the foods, at least you must know which they are and what their technological function is. So the different classes include acidity regulators, colors, carbonating agents, emulsifiers, acidifying agents, gelling agents, preservatives, stabilizers, sweeteners, thickeners. And the Codex Alimentarius has prepared the INS numbering system, which is the International Numbering System, INS. So each one of these food additives has a unique number by which the food additive can be identified. Europe uses the same number, the EU uses the same number, but instead of the INS numbering, they use the E numbering system. So E124 will be the same as INS 124. So the food additives have got many technological functions, and the Codex International Numbering System lists all the functional classes for food additives. And these, as we say, includes all those 27 classes which were shown in the previous slide. And under each class, you have a subclass. For example, under anti-caking agent, you have the subclass of drying agent, you have dusting powder, and release agent. They all come under anti-caking agent, but the anti-stick agent, the drying agent, the dusting powder, and the releasing agent, each chemical of them, it's not that there is only one anti-stick agent or one dusting powder, but all the dusting powders will have a unique number by which they can be identified. So food additives in the use of preparing food are self-limiting. What is meant by this is that the food additive cannot be added in higher quantities than what is required because it will alter the taste of the food, it might alter the texture of the food, and it may give some undesirable effects. So therefore, they themselves are self-limiting. You cannot exceed even the limit that is provided by the regulators. So for example, if you use a high level of a food gum in a salad, you will find that the salad becomes so viscous and thick that nobody could eat it. Similarly, in a soup powder, when you add a thickening agent, if you have added more than is required, rather than having a soup, you will have a gel. For these reasons, manufacturers generally use no more than what is absolutely necessary to achieve the desired technical effect. For example, when you preserve fruits or when you preserve vegetables in acid, vinegar, also you cannot add or you cannot increase the concentration of vinegar because the pickled vegetable will become so sour that nobody can eat it. So they are self-limiting. So The good manufacturing practices for food additives and GRAS substances are that this GMP allows the safety and quality of foods and beverages to be maintained. The HACCP plans include GMPs, are required through FSSAI. All FBOs have to follow the HACCP and GMP plan. The general practice is that the lowest level of the food additive, that is the self-limiting factor, additive necessary to achieve the intended technological function should be used. The food additive industry is a growing industry. This is different from the food industry because they are producing different types of additives. The food additives undergo downstream processing by the manufacturers and the customers, and GMPs for finished products are therefore not necessarily relevant to the food additives, because what you add, you may not see that in the final stages because it might have undergone some chemical reaction. So now coming to the types of food additives. In the food additives, we have food additives which are generally recognized as safe, or what has got GRAS status, GRAS, that is generally recognized as safe, meaning that there is no need for any safety assessment of these additives because there is a safe history of use. These include salt, sugar, vinegar, etc., which have been used for several years, even from times of the Stone Ages. So the commonly used additives are the colors, the artificial colors, as well as the natural colors to change the appearance of the food. Flavors, because everybody has a liking for a different flavor, especially in the ice cream industry, because everybody has an individual liking for a particular flavor. Emulsifiers, especially when we are trying to mix water-soluble, water-immiscible products, gelling agents, preservatives to enhance the shelf life, sweeteners because we are trying to reduce the calorie intake, anti-caking agents when you want free flow powders, antioxidants to enhance the shelf life, especially when it contains large amounts of fats and oils, and acidulants again for organoleptic taste properties as well as to prevent the growth of microorganisms. So let's just go through some of these common food additives. So what is an antioxidant? The name itself suggests that it will remove any oxygen which is present in the food. So it is used to prevent the oxidation of the chemicals or the ingredients in the food. And this is especially required when you have a large amount of fat and oil, and you know that fats and oils can undergo rancidity because in the presence of oxygen also they undergo oxidative rancidity. So if you have oxygen there, it prevents if you have an antioxidant, it removes the oxygen, and so the rancidity can be delayed. In the case of cut fruits and vegetables, an antioxidant is required to prevent the color change, especially the browning reaction, where oxygen is a substrate and it can remove it. The natural antioxidants include vitamin C or ascorbic acid, vitamin E, the tocopherols, lecithin, citric acid, tartaric acid, and gallic acid. Among the synthetic antioxidants, the most commonly used is BHA, that is tertiary butyl hydroxyanisole, and TBHQ, that is tertiary butyl hydroquinone, and BHT, which is butylated hydroxytoluene. We also have compounds such as the galates, propyl, ethyl, and optyl gallate, which are used as antioxidants. You will find a large number of antioxidants being used in products containing ghee and butter, edible oils and fats, and any dry mix which is containing the fats. Colors. This picture itself is so eye appealing. So colors are used generally to preserve or enhance the color of the food. Many a time we have seen when we looked at plant pigments, the effect of heat changes the color. For example, if it's a green color, you know that chlorophyll, it becomes dull, removal of the magnesium. So to preserve the green color or to make the appearance more appealing, color is added. Among the colors, we have got natural colors, which are extracted from their different fruits and vegetables, what we saw under the webinar on pigments. And we also have the synthetic colors. Among the natural colors, annatto is there, which is generally added into dairy and into butter products. Carotene, the beta carotene to give you an orange color, cochineal yellow, chlorophyll for a green color. We have the beta lanes, and I've already given you the list of natural colors that are allowed. Then a large number of synthetic colors, about 8 synthetic colors are allowed. But these synthetic colors are restricted for use in many products. They are permitted for use in only some products, and there is a limit on them. And the limit, upper limit, is 200 ppm or 200 milligrams per kilogram. So you find colors in ice cream, biscuits, cake, confectionery, fruit drinks, and fruit syrup, jam, etc. So the natural colors, here is the list of natural colors. Curcumin to give you a yellow color, chlorophyll to give you a green color, beta carotene to give you an orange color. You have the caramel colors, which are also included in the natural colors. And then you have the synthetic colors, Ponceau, carmosine, erythricin, tartarine, sunset yellow, FCF, indigo, carmine, brilliant blue, and you have fast green, FCF. What does FCF stand for in these names? Sunset yellow, fast green is, it's these particular colors are for coloring foods only. We also have in the colors what are called as lake, aluminium lake colors, which involve these colors, but they are in a colloidal form. So if you recollect when we talked about colors, so the color you see in a food or the color that is used is a color which is different from the light, the color which is absorbed by the coloring agent. So for example, if you want to a blue color, you will see that a blue color is what absorbs all the orange in the light, that is in the electromagnetic spectrum. Similarly, when you see when all the green light is absorbed, what you see is a red color. So this is what is known as complementary color, and I have just put this to make you recollect what we discussed on the pigments and the colors. Then we come to a major group which is known as preservatives. And in the preservatives, we have the class 1 preservatives and the class 2 preservatives. The class 1 preservatives are all those that have the GRAS stated or granted thing generally recognized as safe, which include salt, sugar, vinegar, and spices. So you will see salt is added in pickles to prevent microbial growth. Sugar, high concentrations of sugar are added in jam, etc., to prevent microbial growth. Vinegar is added so that the acidity comes down and prevents microbial growth, and so also the spices. Several spices have got antibacterial activity, and so they are used as the class 1 preservatives. The class 2 preservatives are generally chemicals, and they are used to bring down the pH of the product so that they prevent the growth of the microorganisms, especially yeast and mold. Sodium benzoate and benzoic acid are active at pH 2.5 to 4, and they are preservatives used for preventing the growth of yeast and mold. Sorbates, they are used for preventing the growth of yeast and molds, especially in the pickles. You also have preservatives such as niacin and natamycin, which are actually antibiotics, but these are natural antibiotics which are used to prevent the growth of bacterial thing. Niacin is allowed in cheese. So to continue on the preservatives, we have the propionates, which are used in baked foods to prevent the growth of molds and what is known as the rope forming organisms. If you have kept some baked food for 2 or 3 days and you cut it and pull it apart, you will see the rope, a rope-like structure or a connection between the two pieces, and that is because of the rope-forming organisms, and these are spoilage organisms. Sulfur dioxide and sulfites are used mainly in fruits and vegetable products. Generally, they are used to prevent the enzymatic browning because of the enzyme polyphenol oxidase. But when sulfur dioxide or sulfites are used, there is a limit, and in cut fruits and in the salads, not more than 10 ppm can be used, because yesterday we have seen that sulfur dioxide and sulfites act as allergic agents for those who have asthma. Acetate also, just like vinegar, is used to lower the pH of foods to prevent the growth of mold and yeast. So then you come to this very important group of sweeteners, which are known as the alternate sweeteners, and which are also in the group of food additives as sweeteners. So we can classify these alternate sweeteners into two types of sweeteners. One is the intense sweeteners and the other is the bulk sweeteners. The difference between the intense sweeteners and the bulk sweeteners is these intense sweeteners are much sweeter than sugar or sucrose. And these do not give you any calories. Okay, they do not contribute to the nutritive value. Whereas on the other hand, the bulk sweeteners are sweet, but they are not sweeter than sucrose or sugar, and they do contribute to the nutritive value, where they will have, each gram of them has a lowered calorie content. So you can see in the intense sweeteners, we have got two types of sweeteners, the synthetic sweeteners and the natural sweeteners. And in the synthetic, we have saccharin, acesulfame, potassium, aspartame, which is a dipeptide, cyclamate, neotame, which is a peptide, and sucralose, which has the backbone of sucrose, but it is a chlorinated version of sucrose. In the natural, we have steviol glycosides from the plant stevia. We have taumatin, a plant from it's a protein, a sweet protein from an African plant. We have lohan guo, which is the monk fruit, and it has a sugar called mongroside, which is much sweeter than sucrose. In the bulk sweeteners, we know these, that is fructose, the high fructose corn syrup, glucose syrup, dextrose. But We also have the sugar alcohols or polyols, which have a lower nutritive value and which are generally used in products such as chewing gum. And these are the products of are the sugar alcohols, sorbitol being the sugar alcohol of glucose, maltitol that of maltose, xylitol that of xylose, lactitol is the alcohol of lactose, and erythritol is the alcohol form of the erythrose. So let us look in detail about the structure of the sweeteners and their relative sweetness. So in the sweeteners, the major classification is non-nutritive and the nutritive. So in the non-nutritive, actually, they do not give any caloric value. These include the synthetic sweeteners, and now you will find them in all the sugar-free products, ranging from the bakery products to soft drinks to jams, jellies, etc. And then you have the nutritive sweeteners such as sorbitol, mannitol. You can find these again in chocolates, ice cream, chewing gum, drinks, and etc. Each one of these has got its advantages and disadvantages. So if we look at the intense sweeteners, that means these sweeteners are more sweet than sucrose. You look at the first artificial sweetener that was discovered, and that is saccharin. It was discovered in 1878. It is about 200 to 700 times sweeter than sugar. It is known for its stability, but the disadvantage is that after adding saccharin maybe to your coffee, you have a bitter metallic taste, aftertaste in your mouth for a very long time, and it is unstable at high temperature. Aspartame is another synthetic sweetener which was discovered much later. It is about 200 times sweeter than sugar. Aspartame is a dipeptide. It is a dipeptide of phenylalanine and aspartic acid. It is a methyl ester of phenylalanine and aspartic acid. It is not stable at high temperature, and it gets decomposed, especially in acidic media. It can get decomposed into phenylalanine and aspartic acid. And also, because it has got phenylalanine, yesterday we have seen the inborn error of metabolism, phenylketonuria. So phenylketonurics cannot use aspartame as a sweetener, and any product which contains aspartame, any product, be it a cake or a biscuit or a fruit drink or any other product, the label, a special label is has to be added which says not suitable for phenylketonurics. Acesulfame K is very popular because the taste, it doesn't have the after metallic taste like saccharin, and this is about 200 times sweeter. It is stable at very high temperature, and so therefore you can add it to baked goods, to your gulab jamun, to any sweet that you want, and it generally exists as the potassium salt, and therefore it is always, the name is given as acesulfame K, K standing for potassium. Then you have sucralose. As I said, sucralose is a chemically modified sucrose. So it is made up of the backbone of glucose and fructose. And the hydroxyl groups, 3 hydroxyl groups of sucrose have been chlorinated. So you have this OH, this OH, and this OH. So it has been chlorinated, and the product is sucralose, which is 600 times sweeter than sugar. It is the most heat stable sugar substitute. Then we have another peptide which is neotame, which is very similar to aspartame. This was synthesized as an alternative to aspartame to be made available for phenylketonurics. This is about 8 1000 times sweeter than sugar. It has a very clean taste like sugar. Structure is very similar to aspartame. If you look, this is aspartame structure. See, aspartame is the methyl ester of phenylalanine and aspartic acid. So here you have phenylalanine and you have aspartic acid. The only difference is the amino group, the NH2 group of this is methylated. The free amino group is methylated with a 3,3-dimethyl butyl group. So you have 3 dimethyl group. And the advantage of this is that when it breaks down, so it doesn't easily break down like aspartame, and it is made more stable because of this group, that is the 3,3 dimethyl butyl group, which prevents its metabolism or breakdown to produce phenylalanine. So neotame can be used by phenylketonurics, and there is no regulatory label required for neotame. So now coming to the sugar alcohols, these have got caloric value. They are all polyols. That means they've got several hydroxyl groups on them. So you see sorbitol, and then you have xylitol, which has got a number of hydroxyl groups. And these have, as we say, these are bulk sweeteners and not as sweet as sucrose. So they are less sweeter than sucrose. So if the sweetness of sugar is taken as 100, so you see maltitol has 75. Xylitol is the only one which is as sweet as sugar. Sorbitol is about 60 and erythritol is 70. So in most of the chewing gums and dental products, you find, which sugar would you find? I'm sure all of you can say that the most common sugar that you find is xylitol because it is the same as So all the products containing these sugar alcohols are claimed as anti-caries. That is because there is no sugar, the microorganisms cannot grow on this. However, a disadvantage of the sugar alcohols like sorbitol, lactitol, maltitol are they have laxative effects. And if you are chewing sugar-free gum from morning to evening, you will notice that the next day what the effect is, the laxative effect of these sugar alcohols. And then we come to the natural sweeteners, thaumatin, which is a protein, and it is obtained from an African plant, Thaumacoccus danieli. Its sweetness is 200 times that of sucrose, and it gives you a calorie, it has a calorific value of 4 calories per gram because thaumatin is a protein. We know that all proteins contribute 4 calories per gram. Steviosides are a group of glycosides which are produced from the stevia plant. You have the steviosides and the rubidiosides. These are again 300 times sweeter. They have 0 calorie and the GI, that is the glycemic index, is very low. Mogroside, which is the main constituent of monk fruit, which is available in China, is 200 times sweeter. And very recently, FSSAI has given draft regulations for permitting monk fruit extracts to be used as natural sweeteners. Glycerin also, which is got from the licorice plant and is about 50 times as sweeter than sucrose. And an added advantage of licorice is that it has the licorice flavor, and so you don't need to add another flavor. So the sweeteners are a very important group. The sweeteners and colors are two very important groups as food additives. Then we come to the flavor enhancers. So here, these flavor enhancers, as the name suggests, enhance the flavor. So almost all of you must be eating gobi manchuria or the noodles, whether it is the 2-minute noodles or the yippee noodles. All the flavor, the masala packets will have monosodium glutamate, which enhances the umami flavor or the yeast-like flavor. And most Chinese food MSG is added. Another flavoring enhancer is IMP and GMP, that is inosine monophosphate and guanosine monophosphate. Then you have flavoring agents and adjuvants which help to impart a taste or which help to enhance the aroma in the food. These are natural extracts and synthetic flavors. Basically, these are all aldehydes and ketones, and you generally find the flavoring agents and adjuvants in confectionery, chewing gum, and soft drinks. And they are there only, the flavor will be there and persist as long as these chemicals are there. So in the flavor and these flavor enhancers, you see that in our taste buds which are there in the tongue, we have different parts of the tongue catering to different tastes. Now, you can enhance the specific taste sensations of the uh, products, like the saltiness, the halide groups of 1A. So the sourness is as a result of organic acids. So you see citric acid or tartaric acid, you get a sourness. The sweetness comes from amino acids, peptides, glycosides, etc. Bitterness comes from alkaloids and the terpenes or sugar alcohols. Then umami taste, that is the flavor enhancer, are generally the MSG, IMP, and GMP. And then you have taste modifiers, which can modify the taste. For example, gymnamic acid actually suppresses sweetness. MSG suppresses salt, and modified protein suppresses sour to sweet, and chlorogenic acid suppresses the two thing and enhances the sweetness. So flavor chemistry and the taste physiology are two very interesting subjects, and if you look at the tongue, we can see which part of the tongue is responsible for which taste. Here is a group of some flavoring agents. So this is what you will find mainly in your ice creams and your biscuits and things which give you the flavor. Instead of actually adding a raspberry flavor, these flavoring agents are added. So you have isobutyl methionate, which has a raspberry flavor. You have pentyl ethionate, which gives you the banana flavor. Octyl ethionate, which gives you the orange flavor. Pentyl propionate, which gives you apricot. Methyl butanate, which gives you apple flavor. And ethyl butanate, which gives you pineapple flavor. However, when we look at the regulations on food additives, later on, when we have the webinars on the rules and regulations, if any flavoring agent is added other than a natural flavor, it has to be declared on the label that it contains artificial flavor. Then we have the gelling agents. These the thickeners and the stabilizers, which are generally used to give shape and structure to the food, or to make the food thicker, especially the gelatin, the jello, and in the ice creams. And we have emulsifiers, which are added to prevent the separation of water and fat, and they are used to give the surface wettening. And generally, you will find the emulsifiers used when there is a fat used in the product. So the emulsifiers that are generally used are ammonium phosphatides, lecithin, sorbitol, polyoxyethylenes in combination with propane 1,2-diol. So you find them mainly in cheese, in mayonnaise, in chewing gum, in breakfast cereals, and in ice cream. When we talk about breakfast cereals, these are not the cereals that you get like Kellogg's or Baggeries, but these are the ready on the go cereals which you eat or regularly. I mean, they are ready to eat. And then we have the antimicrobial agents, which are very similar to the preservatives, like benzoic acid, salicylic acid, sorbic acid, which are used in fruits and vegetable products. You have curing and pickling agents. Some of the curing agents, like sodium nitrite, are used um, to cure meat because it will combine with myoglobin to form nitric oxides. And this will prevent the growth of Clostridium and Streptococcus. Then the curing and pickling agents are also used to maintain the appearance and palatability. Then you have the anti-caking agents. These anti-caking agents are generally used in sugars and in salt to make them free-flowing, because both sugar and salt and anything that you want free-flowing, if they absorb moisture, they cake and they become hard and they will clog the pores. And so therefore, to prevent that lumping and caking, anti-caking agents are used, which are generally the carbonates and phosphates of calcium and magnesium. So magnesium carbonate is a very common anti-caking agent which is used. And anti-caking agents are also used in the milk creamer, baking powder, instant soup powders, etc. Then enzymes are a group of food additives, and generally the enzymes are added to either break down a protein or to prevent the or to increase the extraction of the compound by breaking down the cell wall and etc. And for clarification, we have seen it is used for clarification of beer. It is used to prevent the haze formation in beer. It is used to prevent the orange juice from settling down, etc. Then you have neutralizing agents, stabilizing agents such as the gums, carrageenan, gum arabica, guar gum, which are used to stabilize the thing and as emulsifiers and thickeners. And they are generally used in milk and ice cream. You have firming agents, so that for like a canned fruit or a vegetable, it must retain its structure and it should not break down and become soggy. Then humectants, these are compounds which are used to prevent the unwanted drying of the foods. So a humectant is the opposite of a drying agent. So a humectant is used so that the moisture content is retained and the food will retain its structure. So common humectants are glycerin, sorbitol, mannitol, dextrose, and polyhydroxy alcohols. Now you see there are some food additives which have more than one property. Look at sorbitol and mannitol. They are also used as sweeteners and they are also used as humectants. Then you have sequestrants or chelating agents, which are used to chelate or remove unwanted metallic ions and unwanted products which are result in the color change or the texture change of that. For example, EDTA is added to chelate calcium, And organic acids like tartaric acid and citric acid and glycerin are also used to chelate the calcium. Floor improver is a very common food additive which is used in the baking industry, and these floor improvers are used for bleaching purposes and for toughening the dough. These include benzoyl peroxide, chlorine gas, nitrogen, potassium iodate, and if you recollect, very recently there was a hue and cry on potassium bromate. Potassium bromate, KBrO3, was allowed as a floor improver, but having uh, come to know about the carcinogenic effect of KBrO3 or potassium bromate, it has now been removed as a floor improver. Then you have propellants and aerating agents and gases such as carbon dioxide, sodium carbonate, and calcium which are allowed. Then you have solvents which are allowed to be used for dissolving another substance. You have leavening agents which are used in the baking industry, such as sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, tartaric acid, and calcium hydrogen phosphate. So if you look at the bread to see the effect of these agents, you see the control with no additive, and you have monosodium phosphate, which the bread has a very good effect with a large number of pores. So this is a leavening agent which has been added. You have, and here are pictures to show you that among these, monosodium phosphate is a very good leavening agent. Then you have clouding agents to produce haze in liquid foods. Then you have clarifying agents to remove the cloudiness, such as in beer and wines. And you have additives like we have the nutritive additives which are permitted for fortification, such as thiamine, iron, calcium, iodine, lysine, vitamin A, and vitamin D. These are not regulated. These are permitted by the regulators. And in FSSAI, you will find that we have a regulation on fortified foods, where foods are allowed to be fortified with different fortificants. So now coming to the safety of food additives. Tomorrow we will talk about the safety assessment. That means how does a regulator come about putting the limits for the food additives, like not more than 200 ppm or not more than 100 ppm. Why a color is allowed in one food but a color is not allowed in another food. But who are the agencies who set the safe limits for food additives? Generally, it is the regulator who does it. And in the case of food additives, most of the countries depend on JECFA. JECFA is a joint FAO WHO expert committee on food additives. So JECFA is the joint committee. So what they do is they are involved in the risk assessment and risk management of food additives, and they look at the purity. They give the specifications for the food additive. The food additives also, what we discussed all along, the purity and the specifications, just like a MSDS material safety data sheet. In the chemicals, you have the purity and the quantity are regulated by the uh, food safety regulators of every country. So JECFA is responsible for making these regulations and also telling us what the purity of the food additives should be. The Codex has got a committee on food additives and contaminants. which comes under Codex Alimentarius. And these, whatever JECFA recommends, the Codex Committee on Food Additives and Contaminants will put it to Codex, and they come as a Codex guideline, which is then enforced by the governments. So the JECFA is responsible for actually making a limit, which is known as the accepted dietary intake. And based on this acceptable dietary intake, the limits are fixed. So tomorrow we will try to understand how the ADIs for the different food additives are derived, or how they arrive at the ADI. So in this joint expert committee, the FAO is responsible for the chemical evaluation. That means develop the analytical methods and give the specifications on purity and identity. The WHO is responsible for the toxicological evaluation, that is, give the ADI, the no observed adverse effect level, and the exposure studies. So both together, chemical evaluation and the toxicology evaluation, JECFA then gives you the limits, or sets the regulatory limits on food additives. Now, coming to our regulations, the FSSA regulations, which additive can you use and where can you use it? So if you go to FSSAI, the food additives permitted are listed in Chapter 3 and Appendix A of the Food Safety and Standards Regulation 2011 for the particular food or the food category, as it is amended from time to time. The food additives permitted in specific food or food category are made operational by the Gazette notification. And the FBOs who have received approval for any additive other than what is there in the regulations, because sometimes FBOs want to use an additive other than what is there in our list, they are allowed to continue to use them, even though the new regulations have come. So how do we know which food additive to add is permitted? And if you are an FBO, which food additive can you add to which product? So for this, India has got what is known as a food category system. This food category system is different from the food standards. That is, it is different from the food additives compendium. In the food category system, all the food is categorized. We have 17 categories of food. And under each category of food, you will see there are several subcategories. So those of you who have seen the Indian Food Code, that is the IFC, you will see that we have a major category, then we have a subcategory, then we have a sub-subcategory, we have sub-subcategory. So almost any food can be fitted into one of the categories which are listed in the Indian Food Code. So in the Indian Food Code, there is a hierarchy, as I have said. So you have the category. So this is dairy products and analogs which come under the Indian Food Code 1. You have a subcategory 1.1, which is milk and dairy based drinks. You have a sub-subcategory 1.1.1, which is plain milk and buttermilk. And in that 1.1.1 is plain milk and 1.1.2 is buttermilk. So this is the hierarchy in the Indian Food Code. And it is this hierarchy that one has to look for to look at which food additives are allowed. There is a category-wise approval of food additives. So what this category is that it is an orderly decision tree approach. So for a food category, If it is allowed in the main category, then it is allowed in the subcategory, and it is allowed in the sub-subcategory, and it is allowed in the categories much below it. So to go back, if it is allowed in one, then it is allowed in all these categories. So the food additive is allowed in all the categories below it. However, if it is allowed only in 1.1.2, the food additive is not allowed in this category, in this category, in this category, and in this category. So it is allowed only for this category. Another example is, if it is allowed in 1.1.1, then it is allowed in these two, but it is not allowed in 1.1 and in 1. So this is the decision tree approach. So if it is allowed in the main category, it is allowed in all the categories. If it is allowed in the lower category, it is not allowed in the categories above it. So category-wise approval of food additives. Let's look at this example. So category 4 is that of fruits and vegetables. So now I want to know whether I can use sodium benzoate in the, say, a frozen fruit. So I look up the table and I find that sodium benzoate is allowed in frozen fruit, and so I can use this in 4.1.2, but I find that it is not allowed you, so I cannot use it in 4.1.1. I can only use it in 4.1.2. Let's look at another example. If we look at the same fresh fruits and vegetable category, I'm looking for the permit whether a synthetic color is allowed. So I find that the synthetic color is allowed for 4.1.2.5, but I want to use it in fruit-based spreads. I cannot use it because it is allowed only in 5.1.2.5. And neither can I use it in 4.1.2.1. I cannot use it for a dried fruit. I cannot use it for fruit in vinegar or oil. So I can only use the synthetic color in jams, jellies, and marmalades. I can't use it in any one of the other categories. So this is the category-wise approval of food additives. And then we have in the rules and regulations what is known as the carryover of food additives. So this carryover principle applies to the presence of additives such as colors, flavoring agents, antioxidants, anti-caking agents, emulsifiers, and preservatives in foods as a result of the use of raw material or ingredients in which these additives were used. Say I'm using an ingredient X, which is allowed to use a food additive, and I add it to make a product Y, and the product Y is not, the additive is not permitted, but the carryover is permitted. So the amount of food additive in the ingredient should not exceed whatever is given. So this is what is known as the carryover effect of the total food additives. But no carryover of food additives is allowed in infant formula, follow-up formula, or a formula for special medical purposes for infants, for complementary foods for infants and young children. So there is no question of food additive being allowed there, the carryover. So what the food business operator has to do is get the raw material and raw ingredients which do not have the food additive. Then we come to another important category of food processing aids, which are similar to food additives, yet they are different from food additives. And processing aids, unlike food additives, need not be listed in the list of ingredients, because this is only used as a processing aid. The processing aid is not consumed as a food by itself. It is only used in the processing of raw materials, foods, or their ingredients to fulfill a certain technological purpose, and it may result in unintentionally being present in the final product. For example, if you're using a cleaning agent to clean the raw material to prevent microbial growth, you wash the fruits and vegetables with a processing aid which is permitted. And if that is used in the manufacture and there is a small amount of the processing aid, that is permitted. But FSSAI is coming out with a list of processing aids which can be used for different categories. So the difference between a food processing aid and a food additive. The processing aid is intentionally used in the processing of raw material to fulfill a certain technology, a technological purpose. It may result in the unintentional and unavoidable presence in the final product. These residues must not present any health risk, and they are not necessary to be listed in the list of ingredients. However, a food additive is the intentional use for a specific technology purpose. It becomes directly or indirectly a component of the food, and it has to be listed in the list of ingredients. So just let's look at an example of enzymes as processing aids. So among the processing aids, enzymes is a very large group. It is used in a number of ways. It is used to clarify juices. It is used to improve the yield of the fruit juice. That means like cellulase is used to break down the cell wall. It is used to overcome filtration problems. It is used to enhance the liquefaction rate of fruits. It is used to improve the color and flavor extraction. And in case of vegetables, it enables total liquefaction. So a large number of enzymes are used as processing aids. So extraction solvents is another group of processing aids which is very commonly used. So they are generally used for extraction procedures. One major extraction solvent that is used is hexane, which is food grade hexane, which is used for the extraction of oil. So we have solvent extracted oil, and the regulation says that the hexane should not exceed, the residual hexane should not exceed 5 parts per million. So some of the extraction solvents that are commonly used are food grade hexane, methyl acetate, ethyl methyl ketone, dichloromethane, cyclohexane, etc., the organic thing. But one has to ensure that most of the processing aid is removed and does not and is not a health hazard. So this finishes the webinar on what are food additives, the types of food additives which are permitted, and are how you identify which food additives are allowed to be used in a particular food. The limits of these are provided in the tables from table 1 to table 16 of Appendix A, and you can find out whether the food additive is allowed or not. Tomorrow, what we will cover is the principle of the safety assessment. How did the regulators come out with the limits of, say, 200 ppm or not to exceed 100 ppm, and for which, why it is allowed in food X but not allowed in food Y. So that we will cover under the principles of safety assessment of food additives.